All right, everyone. Good evening once again, and welcome to our pre-camp webinar for the 2019 Southeast Headfirst Honor Roll Softball Camp. We are excited to share some key info with you all this evening before we meet you this weekend down in Orlando. You'll see on your screen here just a quick agenda that we have for this evening. We're going to start by certainly introducing ourselves and then some of the other faces that you're going to see at camp this weekend. Then we want to share some information on how to prepare for camp, both logistically and from a player engagement perspective. And then finally, and most importantly, we are going to leave plenty of time at the end to answer any questions that you might have. Now, we will have almost half an hour dedicated to that live Q&A at the end, but much like you did with the hands on your toolbar, you're going to be able to see a messaging option as well, where you can chat with us and we can answer your questions real time, or we can tell you, hey, this is a great question. We're going to save that for the question and answer portion later on in our webinar. So feel free, as you have questions that come up, don't feel the need to wait until the end to raise those questions. You can go ahead and put those into the chat function. We'll receive them and then answer you accordingly, or let you know that we're going to save that question until the end of the webinar. So first, want to focus on our team. And the folks that we're going to introduce first are those of us who are hosting the webinar this evening. So my name is Corey Spera. I am the Manager of Operations here for our Headfirst Honor Roll baseball and softball camps. I was actually a honor roll camper myself. I went twice, once back in 2009, and then in 2010, the camps were a key part of my recruiting process, helped me get recruited to Lafayette College, where I was a four-year relief pitcher. I was lucky enough to be the captain for the back half of my career there. And Kevin, who you heard from just a moment ago, is also going to be hosting this webinar with me. I'll do the bulk of the speaking portion here. Kevin will be the one answering your questions via that chat function, and then at the end during the live question and answer. Kevin is a graduate of NYU back in 2017. Kevin was recruited to play baseball at Dickinson, where he went his freshman year before transferring to NYU. He was a two-time intern with us here at Headfirst in 2015 and 2016, in addition to being a camp alum back in 2012. Kevin runs point on all things marketing here for Honor Roll and occasionally gets to host webinars with me. We've got a lot of other members of our team who are not on this webinar, but who you are going to meet at camp. And we'd love to introduce those faces to you just so that they're familiar when you get to actually meet them in person in Orlando. So first, naturally, we'll start with Jenna Orlando. Jenna is our Associate of Operations here in our Honor Roll division. Jenna, like myself, is a Lafayette College grad. She graduated in 2017. A friend of mine, a classmate and former coworker at Lafayette. She was a four-year starter for the Leopards, playing infield and outfield, two-time Patriot League academic honor roll. She is now full-time in our honor roll division. Also at camp, you will meet Elise Graziano. Elise is our Senior Manager of Headfirst Professional Sports Camps. So one of the really neat things that we do as a company, in addition to honor roll camps, is that we have the opportunity to run the official youth camps for 6 Major League Baseball franchises: the Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, Braves, Pirates, and your World Series winning Washington Nationals, in addition to the Falcons of the National Football League and the DC United of Major League Soccer. Elise runs that division, really unique and cool part of our Headfirst umbrella. She herself was quite the softball player. She played at Georgetown, graduated in 2014, a 2014 All Big East first team, 4 times on the Big East All Academic team. She started 198 career games for the Hoyas. That is out of 199 career games played. Feel free to ask her about that one game that she didn't start. She was also a 4-year NFCA Scholar Athlete. She played for Coach Pat Conlon, one of our great friends, who will also be in attendance with us in Orlando. This is Brendan Sullivan. Brendan is the founder and president of the Head First Companies. He is a graduate of Stanford University back in 1996. It only took him 3 years. He happened to get drafted by the San Diego Padres after that third year. Before Stanford, he is from DC, which is where our company is based. He was the DC Gatorade Player of the Year, in addition to quite a career at Stanford. In the summer, was a Cape Cod League Relief Pitcher of the Year. As I mentioned, picked up by the Padres, made it all the way up to AAA, also had some time with the Texas Rangers. You can see some of his accolades there, among many more. He will be on site in Orlando. You'll hear a lot from him as he will play MC and have a lot of conversations with parents and players alike. Then there is Max McKenna. Max is our senior manager of marketing. He is an Amherst College grad back in 2011. Max works with Kevin as well as our sales and customer experience teams here at Head First to run all of those, the marketing, the sales, the CX that we have here in our honor roll division. As I mentioned, Amherst grad, 2011, was a NESCAC all-conference pitcher there. After his time at Amherst, he was a history instructor and baseball coach at the Masters School after doing a little bit of teaching and coaching at Phillips Andover Academy as well. Max is a fantastic, fantastic resource on the recruiting process for families and players. He is actually going to be hosting a panel on Sunday with our great friend Bonnie Pettis, who we're going to introduce shortly, that I highly recommend all parents attend. It is certainly a great session. Again, Max, a great resource on the recruiting process. There are many more folks who are going to be working for us at camp. A lot of friendly faces who are going to be inhabiting Soldiers Creek. But just wanted to highlight a couple of more friends who are very excited to see down in Orlando, who also have pretty pertinent backgrounds. So one in your top left there is Kate Brownell. Kate had a great softball career at Buffalo State. And then after graduation, she was an assistant softball coach at Amherst. She now does a lot of personal training. But again, it's just a fantastic resource and someone who really knows this industry and this space inside and out. And then another great student athlete, former student athlete down there in the bottom right corner, Malia Rogers. She played softball at Mary Washington, a member of the class of 2018, and she actually works full-time for us as well. She helps Elise run that Head First Professional Sports Camp division that I mentioned earlier. Here's Bonnie. As I alluded to, Bonnie Pettis will be joining us. Bonnie is the softball director at DCAT. DCAT, that is Diamond College Advisory Team. It's a college advisory program for aspiring college student athletes in softball, baseball, and soccer. They're here to aid families in the recruiting process and to maximize student athletes' options for a great college experience, of course, both on and off the field. Bonnie, a tremendous resource and a tremendous playing and coaching career. She was a two-sport all Ivy League student athlete at Yale in softball and basketball. She went on into the softball coaching world. She was an assistant coach at UConn and Southern Colorado, then became the head coach at Furman, where she was a two-time Southern Conference Coach of the Year. Also, one of the coolest things that Bonnie has done, among many, many cool things, she is was the pitching coach for the Great Britain women's national softball team in 2006 and 2010 during those World Championship seasons. All right, want to move on to some logistical information to get you all set for camp this weekend. So let's cover some of the basics first. Of course, hopefully this is not new information for you, but camp is going to be hosted at the beautiful Boomba Soldiers Creek Park. That's in Longwood, Florida, just a little bit north of Orlando. It's going to start on Saturday, November 9th. Of course, this is a two-day camp, Saturday the 9th and Sunday the 10th. But the start date is Saturday the 9th, and the start time is 7 a.m. We are going to run check-in from 7 to 7:30. camp programming will not begin until 7:40. You may arrive earlier, but we are not going to start checking in the first ball player until 7 a.m. Here you can see a nice overhead view of that beautiful Soldiers Creek Park that we are going to be hosting camp at. On the right of the picture, you'll see that red star marked by entrance. That is the main gate, that gate between fields 5 and 6. That whole parking lot is going to be available to us, and that entrance between fields 1 and field 6 that I am moving my cursor over right now is going to be a very attractive entrance to go through. However, we ask that all players and families take the entrance between fields 5 and 6. We will funnel all players through that entry to make sure that we have every player checked in at camp, every player receives their jersey as well. You can see you'll just head down that pathway between fields 5 and 6 to where our player check-in will be stationed. We will have many folks along the way to direct you, and then you will be in the bleachers, the very nice covered bleachers of field 1 for our all-camp meeting that will kick off our camp programming at 7:40. So camp programming starts at 7:40. That's that all-camp meeting. We are going to keep the ball players there for only a short period of time. That meeting is going to be hosted by Brendan, who's the president and founder of Head First, who I introduced just a little bit earlier. And he is going to quickly move into a parents-only meeting. He will send the ball players to go stretch, and parents, you'll have an opportunity to speak with Brendan while the players get stretched out before they start their defensive showcase, which is sort of the first on-field component of camp. That defensive showcase is going to start promptly at 9 a.m. All of our coaches will be arriving by 8:30 a.m., get their coach packets with all of the player information, take a seat on our showcase field, and get ready to rock and roll with our catchers who will be kicking off our defensive showcase at 9 a.m. So we group the players by primary position. This is not necessarily the position that you signed up for during registration. This is the position that you want to showcase at. So if you signed up for camp as a primary catcher and secondary outfielder, but for whatever reason, you would love to defensively showcase on Saturday at shortstop, you are allowed to do that, okay? So it is not, we will not check what you registered as for the defensive showcase. However, you can only showcase at one defensive position, and that includes pitcher. A pitcher showcase is part of this defensive showcase. So you can choose to showcase as a catcher, an infielder, an outfielder, or a pitcher, but only one of those positions. Now, the defensive showcase is not the only thing that's going to be going on during this time block. We're also going to have some objective assessments that are going on other fields. That's going to include taking the 20-yard dash or home to first time, also the home to home time, and overhand throwing velocity. So once we move all the players through all of the different defensive showcase rotations, we will move on to our offensive showcase, which is going to be structured in the same way. So players are going to hit on the field in front of all the college coaches in the same groups that they defensively showcased in. We're also going to be taking a metric here. That's where players are going to have the opportunity to take their exit velocity. Not all players, of course, will be hitting it once. There is a little bit more downtime during this offensive showcase, which provides a great opportunity for players to eat lunch. We're going to provide more specifics on that timing once you get on site. Brendan will do a nice job of that during that parents-only meeting while the ball players are stretching. So that really takes us through the day one morning. Now I want to touch on a little bit of information with the day one afternoon and evening schedule. So that first piece of information there that is written in red, if you have attended a Head First Honor Roll camp before, then this is going to be a little bit different for you. One of the cool parts of our program is that we have an on-field practice that's led by college coaches. That has often been on day 2 in the past, but for this camp, it's actually going to be on day 1. So players are going to have the opportunity to participate in both the defensive and offensive showcase. And then they're going to roll right into this practice with the college coaches after we introduce them all. Players are going to be split up by position in this practice. So there are going to be coaches on one field that are hosting a catcher's practice, coaches on another field that are hosting an infielder's practice, outfielder's practice, etc. for all of the positions. We're going to let you know which coaches are where so that you can either make a decision based on the position that you'd like to practice at, or maybe if you're going back and forth between two positions, but there's a coach that you'd really like to work with on one of those fields, then you can make the decision that way as well. After the practice, we're going to get going into our simulated games, which is going to take up the rest of day one and all of day two. So we wait to assign players to teams until after check-in. We are very strict on our capacities by position. And from an enrollment perspective, we make sure that there are not going to be 60 catchers at camp because we want playing time to be equal for all players at their primary and secondary positions. So we've got these strict capacities that we adhere to from an enrollment perspective, and we wait until all players have checked in to finalize those teams. We'll do that finalization during the offensive and defensive showcase and then pass that along to you to make sure that even playing time is going to persist throughout the event. So players are going to be assigned to teams, and each of those teams is going to play in one 7-inning game on day one. They're going to play in two 7-inning games on day two. Let's talk about these games a little bit. These games are designed to facilitate action and maximize opportunities. As I mentioned before, we've got these strict capacities such that there are not going to be 10 shortstops on one team. Everybody's going to have ample time to play at their primary and secondary positions that they were registered at. We also impart some rules on these games that are a little bit different than a normal high school game or a normal travel ball game. Again, this is to sort of facilitate that action. We're going to go over these rules at camp. They're also going to be provided to you in your camp program that you receive. But just as an example, players are going to start with a 1-and-1 count. That's to facilitate strike throwing by the pitchers and swinging the bat by our hitters. Also, the batting order is going to run continuously. We're going to hit 6 batters per inning. We're not going to play 3 up, 3 down. This is going to ensure more equal at bats over the course of the 2 days. Players are going to receive a roster in their first game, and this roster is not built out sort of in a batting order. Players are going to be listed before others, and they will start with that first player listed. That'll be the first player to hit. But if the 5th player on that list is the last batter of game 1, the 6th player on that list will start game 2. So this is not a true batting order in the sense that we'll start at the top for every single game. This batting order is going to run continuously. And again, just to reiterate, these teams are going to be balanced by the primary and secondary position assignments that players signed up for during the registration process. To move on to day 2, again, the games are going to take up our time on day 2. So the arrival time is going to depend on your team assignment. We're essentially going to have 2 sets of teams. On day 1, one of those sets of teams is going to play in the early game slot, and the other set of teams is going to play in the late game slot. So if you play in the early game slot on day 1, you'll play in the early game slot on day 2. And same thing for the late game slot. You will not be expected to arrive earlier on day 2. You will play in that late game slot. Each team, again, is going to play in 2 7-inning games on day 2. Between those games, there are going to be all camp meetings that are going to be led by the head first staff. There's also going to be plenty of opportunity for the players to interact with the coaches, both on and off the field, that we'll touch on in just a little bit. That at least the importance of those opportunities to engage with coaches. As I alluded to at the beginning when I was introducing Max and Bonnie, there's also a panel question and answer for parents about the recruiting process. So that's going to be hosted by Max, from our Head First staff, as well as Bonnie from DCAT. That panel is going to take place twice. It's going to take place before each set of teams' first game. So if you're in the early game slot, you're going to have an opportunity to hear it. If you're in the late game slot, you don't need to arrive early to hear that panel Q&A. We're going to run that panel Q&A back before the second set of teams game slot as well. Also, important note here, there aren't going to be any additional meetings after a team's second game on day 2, such that when your second game finishes on day 2, your camp programming is complete. Now, you are more than welcome to stay at camp, interact with us, interact with the college coaches. But if you are playing in that early game slot, we're going to have 4 games on day 2. You'll be finished after game 3. You are more than welcome to take off at that point. Regardless of what game slot you're in on day 2, camp will end by approximately 4:30 p.m. We know folks have flights to catch and places to go, and we are not going to keep you late into the evening on Sunday. We're going to get you out of there by 4:30. Just a quick note here on footwear, bats, helmets. Soldiers Creek, again, beautiful facility, all natural, so metal spikes are absolutely permitted. And bats and helmets, we know that players like to use their own, but if for whatever reason, we know some of you are traveling from very far away, and if bringing a bat or a helmet just wasn't in the cards for you all, we will have bats and helmets in every single dugout. We do ask that, of course, players who are using their own bats, please have those be up to date with the current high school regulations. All right, want to shift here ever so slightly and talk about preparing for camp, but now from more of an engagement and approach perspective, which is going to be particularly important for our players. You can see here we've got this slide broken into 3 different categories: a before camp, an at camp, and an after camp. I think many people think of this topic, this engagement topic, as solely an at camp opportunity, but it really does fall of equal importance into each of these 3 buckets. We'll just go through chronologically, and we'll start here with before camp. We certainly recommend that each player come into a camp with a list of schools that they're interested in. This does not mean that we are expecting a current freshman or sophomore in high school to know where they want to go to college. What we do expect is that players have done their research, and that even if they don't know what they want to study, they know things that they like and dislike, and maybe it revolves around part of the country. Maybe it revolves around the size of the school, whatever it have you. We expect that players have done some research on their end and have at least put together a loose school list of programs that they're interested in that are going to be attending our camp. If you go into this camp without sort of looking at who is going to be in attendance and what schools you might have interest in, what schools you might want to connect with, it's going to be a little bit more of an overwhelming process once you get on site. Furthermore, we also suggest that players reach out to these schools that are going to be in attendance. Now, of the 45 plus schools that are going to be there, I am not sure of a player who has all 45 plus schools on their list. That does not seem particularly realistic to me. Of course, all of these schools have the common denominator that they are fantastic academic schools, but all of them are very, very different as well. So we want you to reach out to those schools that you have an interest in as of right now. Let them know that you're going to be at camp. Let them know that you're going to seek them out at camp and look forward to having a conversation with them. Also, let them know why you're interested in the school. Now, important note here, again, in addition to don't send 45 plus of these emails, but if there are 10 to 15 schools that you are legitimately interested in that are going to be there, or maybe it's only 5, or maybe for some of you it's 20, email them. Now, coaches are busy folks. School is still in session. They've got a lot going on with their own teams on campus. So, important note here, they might not get back to you. That's okay. That's okay. That does not mean that they are ignoring you. They are absolutely reading these messages that you are sending, and they are flagging you, right? They see, okay, this player is coming to Head First this weekend. I'm going to be there. I got the roster from Head First already. I'm going to highlight you on my sheet, and I'm going to make sure that I watch you during the showcases and during the games in Orlando. They are going to do that. They might not reach back out to you. That is okay. Do not take that as a deterrent if you do not receive an email from every coach that you reach out to. Want to shift towards that middle section there, that at camp, where I think a lot of us think about this engagement. And it's good because it's a really great opportunity to do so. You can see there, engage, engage, engage. It's a unique opportunity to be shoulder to shoulder with 45 plus of the best academic softball programs in the country. To not take advantage of that opportunity and try to network and engage with as many of the great coaches that we are going to have there is going to be a missed opportunity. Now, we are also completely understanding of the fact that it might not be the easiest thing in the world to walk up to Coach Megan Murray, even though she is one of the nicest people that I know, but because she is a softball coach at Princeton, and Princeton is your dream school, that can be a little bit intimidating. We understand that. And through a couple of different ways, we try to ease that process for you. Certainly through our camp programming, right? As I mentioned during the schedule, you're going to be on field with these coaches for a practice. You're going to be with these coaches for games. Coaches are going to be on the field, in the dugouts during those games. Coaches are going to be roaming around the facility as well. There are going to be so many natural opportunities for you to interact with them. They are not going to be forced. After every game, the coaches on those fields have a home plate conference where they talk to you about how the game went, and then you have an opportunity to talk to them individually after that conference is over. There are a ton of opportunities for you to have these organic interactions with the coaches. With all that being said, we still completely understand that for some players, this is still not going to be easy. Some of us are a little bit more shy or reserved in nature. Even for those of us who are a little bit more gregarious, this can still be a pretty intimidating task. If that's the case, we ask those players or the families of those players to seek us out. Seek out the Head First staff. Find somebody in a red shirt. We will provide you with the tools. We will provide your player with the tools and the confidence to make sure that they can go and have these conversations with the coaches. Because again, if you go through these 2 days without engaging with these coaches and having conversations with them, we do think that is, a bit of a missed opportunity. And finally, one piece that some folks might overlook is this after camp component. Follow up with the coaches who you made engagements with. A couple different things here. You're going to come to camp with that school list. Maybe Gettysburg wasn't on that list, but you played on Coach Hunt Shepard's field and you absolutely loved her energy, which you will. Gettysburg might be on your list now. Just because they weren't a school that were on your list or a school that you reached out to before camp doesn't mean that you can't reach out to them after camp, right? So those schools that you engaged with that were on your list, that weren't on your list, that are on your list now, follow up with them after camp, especially if you had an in-person conversation with them in Orlando. They are going to speak with hundreds of ball players. And in order to make sure that you stand out to them and to make sure that you stay top of mind, you need to reach out to them after camp to keep that conversation going, to increase the number of times that you get to connect with them and to carry on a conversation that spans way more than just those 2 days in Orlando and continues throughout your recruiting process. So again, to reiterate, 3 really important buckets here: before, at, and after camp. all fantastic opportunities to engage with the college programs who are going to be in Orlando with us this weekend. Speaking of those programs, just a few of them listed here. Again, of note, as I sort of mentioned in talking about the before camp engagement and your school list, the common denominator here is that all of these schools are fantastic academic institutions, but the difference between an academic experience at Amherst and an academic and social experience at the University of Virginia is incredibly different. Now, of course, that's a small Division III school and a larger Division I school, but even on a smaller level, if you take an Amherst and an NYU, both fantastic schools, both Division III, both proudly wear purple, but couldn't have more different academic experiences. So again, just to reiterate that point that I made, please do your research, please look into these schools, and don't just say, oh, I've heard of that school before, that's a really good school, I had a friend that went there, so these schools are on my list. See what piques your interest and reach out to those schools accordingly. But all in all, a great list. We're really lucky and are excited to see so many of these schools this weekend, in addition to seeing you all. Just a couple more points here that I want to touch on very quickly. First, some NCAA recruiting legislation. This is information that has come out well over a year at this point, but it does have an effect on camp, and basically the crux of this rule is that if you have not completed September 1st of your junior year, then you are not eligible to have a recruiting specific conversation with a Division I coach, okay? So having completed September 1st of your junior year means you cannot have an in-person recruiting specific conversation with a Division I coach at camp. So let's unpack that very quickly. Sort of affects two different groups of people. First, the classes of 2020 and 2021. Those are our current juniors and seniors. Current juniors and seniors, it is now November. That means all of you have completed September 1st of your junior year. This means that you can have these recruiting specific conversations with Division I college coaches. It'll also mean that you receive a black wristband when you check in. You will get a black wristband and you'll get your jersey. Freshmen and sophomores will only get their jersey. This lets coaches know, just as a sort of easy reference, who they can have recruiting specific conversations with. And that essentially means that there are no parameters that you sort of have to fall under when you're having these conversations with coaches. You can talk to them about the recruiting process, specifically in the sense of you playing for that school. So recruiting specific, think of that as sort of a persuasive conversation, a conversation where a coach is trying to convince you that their program is the best for you, and you in turn trying to convince them, hey, I am the best player, for your program. Those recruiting specific, persuasive conversations are able to be had by our current juniors and seniors with Division I college coaches. If you're a freshman or sophomore, this means that you can't talk to coaches, right? No, wrong, incorrect, couldn't be more wrong. You can still interact with college coaches. You just can't have these recruiting specific conversations with them. So what can you talk about? Well, certainly you can introduce yourself. You can exchange pleasantries. You can get to know these people and start to build these relationships that you're going to continue to build on throughout your recruiting process. Also, these coaches are going to be on the field with you. They're going to be practicing with you. You can talk to them about instruction. They're going to be able to help you, and you should take that instruction and build off of it and talk with them and make sure that you understand what they are trying to teach you. Such a great opportunity to learn and build your skills as a softball player. And then finally, and probably most importantly, this development improvement. Again, these coaches are going to be there during the games, and they're going to be watching you intently. Coaches are going to be in your dugout. They're going to see you have 3 at-bats in a game, and they're going to see you hit 2 doubles to right field and then also roll over on a ground ball to shortstop. ask the coach in your dugout after the game, Coach, what'd you see? What were the differences in my swings when I really stayed on the ball and hit it the opposite way? And then when I rolled over to the shortstop, what'd you see? What did I do differently? These coaches are fantastic recruiters, fantastic evaluators of talent, but they're also really great skill developers, and you should use them as such while you are at camp. I want to make a quick note about Next Pro as well. Next Pro is our at-camp video provider. Next Pro has a pretty unique product. They're going to be videoing every single game. They're going to cut up that footage and tag it to each individual hitter and pitcher. This video is then going to be put into a database for our college coaches. It's a searchable database such that they could type in Graziano, and if Elise was at camp, all of Elise Graziano's footage as a pitcher or hitter will pop up for them to watch. A really unique recruiting tool for them and for you as ball players. Now, this isn't just for the coaches. You're able to get this video as well. If Next Pro hasn't emailed you yet, they certainly will. They will also have some representatives on site such that you can speak with them. And if you are interested, purchase this video for yourself and use it as a key part of your recruiting process. Okay, want to move on and spend this last 20 minutes that we have scheduled for our live question and answer. So a few things here. I know many of you have already figured out how to send in a question. We went over it a little bit earlier. You can see on screen here the directions to do so. So I know Kevin has exchanged messages with many of you already, but we are going to address some more questions now too. But of course, worth saying here that this is not your only opportunity to have a question answered. So if we don't get to you tonight, or if you have to jump off, please don't worry. Please reach out to us via phone, via email at any time. We will get back to you. We will be online up until we see you Saturday morning. So please reach out to us and we will make sure to get back to you accordingly. So without further ado, Kevin, I'm going to pass it off to you. What questions have we been getting and what can we answer for some folks?
Thanks, Corey. A lot of great questions coming in already. We'll start with one that I know is one of your favorites. Get it in a lot of our webinars. A lot of softball over these 2 days. We want to make sure that the ball players are hydrated and energized. What is the food and water situation at camp?
Yes, one of my favorite questions indeed, Kevin. I like to stay hydrated and well fed at these things, as I know players, families do as well. So I'll address water first. Water absolutely available on every single field that the ball players will be on. If players want to have some other type of drink, we encourage them to bring that with them. But there is going to be water available in every single dugout. There will be cups. Feel free to bring your own water bottles so you can fill that up. And of course, there will be some other water options throughout the facility in terms of water fountains and things like that. As for drinks for families, feel free to bring your own, but also there is going to be a concession stand open on site. That concession stand, in addition to drinks, will of course have food as well. So feel free to purchase your food from that on-site concession stand. We do not make you do so. You are more than welcome to go off-site to purchase food as well. We're going to highlight some places that are close by, very easy to get to in the program that we give you when you check in on site. But plenty of options is the main takeaway here, Kevin. Food and water that can be purchased on site, plenty of places close by that you can bring food off site to the facility. And again, can't stress this enough. I know some of us are coming from areas where it's getting a little bit colder. It's supposed to be a beautiful, warm weekend in Florida. Players are going to be sweating. We will be sweating right along with you. There's going to be plenty of water available in each dugout for the players.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. And a question that just came in about the pre or post camp communications with coaches. Is there anything that you should do to try and, make the email stand out with the subject line, or is it better just to kind of be open and honest with the coaches and straight up in your communication?
That is a really, really good question. And the answer is sort of both. So a couple of points here. I'm going to touch on the latter part of the question that you raised first, and that's about being open and honest. That is always the way to do this, and that is always what you can expect from these coaches as well, that honesty factor. No one wants to tell a player that they are a high recruit on their radar just to drag them along in the process, and ultimately not mean what they're telling you. So in turn, coaches want you to be open and honest with them as well. So if there is a coach who is incredibly high on you and they are from a university that primarily has engineering programs and you do not want to study engineering, I'm certainly not telling you to cross that school off your list, but be honest with that coach. If they are being very forward with you and want you to come to their school, make sure that you let them know, hey, coach, this school probably just isn't the fit for me. I'm looking for a different type of major that's offered, or I'm looking for a bigger school or a smaller school, whatever it may be. So that openness, that honesty is always, always encouraged. As for the standing out component, I think that's a really important component to touch on. And that doesn't mean that you need to have some very flashy marketing tagline in your subject, or even start off with quite the hook in your email back to them. But what it does mean is that send them a personalized email. And this is for before camp and after camp. Please write emails that are individualized to schools and programs. If you are writing an email where all you have to do is Control F the name of the school and insert the different school for each email that you send, then you are not sending the right type of email. Show these coaches that you have done your research. Show them that your interest is legitimate, that you are interested in Lafayette College because it's a small school and they play at the Division I level. And even though they have a great liberal arts curriculum, they also have a fantastic engineering program. Show them that you've at least done your cursory research in those emails. And after camp as well, again, don't send those blanket emails. Refer to engagements, refer to moments, to conversations that you had with these coaches at camp. That's going to help two things. One, it's going to help you stand out because your email is going to be personalized. It's going to be an engaging read for the coaches. Also, it's going to help them remember who you are. If you can reference, hey, coach, it was awesome having you in the third base dugout for the final game of the weekend. We had a long weekend, but you were absolutely bringing the noise, and you waved me around third base in that last game, and I slid into home, and Corey called me out, but I was really safe, and we all knew that I was safe, and we should have won the game. Refer to those moments that you had with coaches again. That's going to help you stand out as well. That was a really great question. Thank you for asking it.
Great. And the next one, Corey, we have a lot of parents come to camp. So can families watch all of the programming that will be going on? And what is sort of the overall role of parents at camp? How can they best support their student athlete?
Another really good and important question. So first part of the question, yes, absolutely. And we want you to watch all of the programming that we have, all of the showcasing, all of the practice, all of the games. We want you to be there watching and see what your players are doing and learning and how they're engaging with all of these different college programs. So important. And also, as I've alluded to, there are going to be some parents only components of camp as well. There's going to be that parents meeting that's going to follow the all camp meeting that's going to start camp off at 7:40 on Saturday morning. And then there's also going to be that parents only question and answer panel with Max and Bonnie. So plenty of things for parents to see, and we want them to see it all and hopefully enjoy it all as well. Excuse me. When it comes to the role of parents on site and how they should support their players, I like how that listener phrased the question, Kevin, in terms of support, because that's exactly what you should do. You should be supporting your ball player. We get this question mostly when it comes to speaking with the coaches, and that's sort of how I'd like to address this. When it comes to interacting with the college coaches, our best advice is that the players should be the one who do the initial engagement. The players should be the ones who are approaching the college coaches and making the introductions, not the parents, not the parents. Parents, you play such a key role and are such an amazing resource, and we know it is so much of your time and focus and energy to get your ball players to on-site, and sometimes it can be really hard for you to take that back seat because you want the best for your players, and we know that. But ultimately, these coaches are recruiting your daughters to play, and they are not recruiting you to play shortstop for Harvard or for Dartmouth or for Lafayette or Amherst. So it's really important that these coaches get an idea of who your ball player is without you over the shoulder. Now, there are going to be some coaches who are going to want to engage the parents as well. And what we suggest to our parents is that you sort of stay out of those conversations until you are asked in those conversations. And they might be speaking with your ball player and have a ton of interest and be making a ton of connections and wave you over to join that conversation, and you should 100% do that. But again, we just stress that it is not the best strategy for a parent to initiate that conversation. So another really good question there, Kev.
Great. And this next one, Corey, is specific to our pitchers out there. I know you spoke before about the breakdown of primary and secondary positions during the defensive showcase. If you are a pitcher who also plays another position, should you showcase as a pitcher during that defensive showcase?
Yeah, another really good question. And yeah, let's just clarify something again. I know I brought that up in talking about the defensive showcase, but you can showcase at any position you want. It does not matter what you are registered as. You can showcase at any defensive position you want. Now, when it comes to the games and your playing time based on primary and secondary position, that does depend on what you registered as. But for the defensive showcase, it does not matter. So if you're a primary catcher, secondary outfielder, and you want to showcase at third base, do it. That's fine, but that is the only position that you get to showcase at. Now, those positions include pitchers. So you cannot showcase as a third baseman and as a pitcher. You have to showcase as a pitcher or catcher or infielder or outfielder. So our advice to pitchers is this. You are going to get the opportunity to pitch a lot during the 3 games over the course of 2 days. You are going to get plenty of innings and plenty of opportunities to throw in front of the college coaches. Therefore, if you are truly serious about playing a position outside of pitcher in college, we suggest that you showcase defensively at a position outside of pitcher. Now, if you play another position, but you know that your future is at pitcher and that's what you want to do, and yes, you signed up as a secondary outfielder and you're going to do that, and you're going to hit and you're going to play some innings in the outfield because you like it and you're a good athlete and you think you could contribute to a college program, but you know that you are a pitcher through and through, and that's what you want coaches to see you as, then you should showcase defensively as a pitcher. But remember, as a pitcher, you're going to get plenty of opportunities to throw in front of the coaches during the games. So we suggest that if you are serious about your field position outside of the circle, then definitely showcase at that position during the defensive showcase.
Awesome. And just being mindful of the time here, it looks like we got time for about one or two more questions. Corey, you talked about the coaches practice before. I think we agree one of the cooler parts of camp. Will the players know where coaches will be during that practice?
Yeah, it's a really important note to double down on, Kevin. Players will know where coaches are during the practice, where specific coaches are during the practice. That's going to be something that we're going to post to our mobile site. The mobile site is something that you're going to hear a lot about once you get on site. So if you don't know what the heck we're talking about when we say mobile site, that is totally, totally fine. That's going to be something that we highlight quite a bit once we meet you this weekend in Orlando. It's going to be one of the documents that's posted there, and you're going to be able to see, okay, working with the outfielders on field 5 is Coach Harrison from Carnegie Mellon, et cetera, et cetera. I really want to see Coach Harrison. I'm a secondary outfielder and a primary third baseman, but you know what? Just so I can go see Coach, I'm going to practice as an outfielder. That's totally fine. Totally fine by us, whatever position that you practice at. Much like the defensive showcase, feel free to go wherever for the practice. You do not have to go where you registered as, but really just for timing constraints, the practice is going to be about a half an hour. We do suggest that players just go to one of the fields and don't try to hit 2 or more fields as part of the practice, because you really do want to start connecting with those coaches who are on the field and get integrated into that practice instead of bouncing all over the place.
Thanks, Corey. And we'll go with the last question here. I know this is something that you talked about at length, but really crucial part of our camp. The difference between those juniors and seniors at camp and the younger girls and those recruiting specific conversations. Could you just provide a little bit more detail on kind of what constitutes recruiting specific, and for those girls who are younger and unsure about the questions they can ask, how they should proceed with that?
Yeah, it's definitely worth the extra time here, Kevin, and I'm glad you're bringing it back up, and our listeners are as well. There is not a concrete definition of what a recruiting specific conversation is, which is not super helpful, but that's okay. We have a pretty good interpretation based on what we know about the rule, what our college coach friends know about the rule. And now that we've had this rule for almost a year and a half, everybody feels pretty comfortable with sort of how we are interpreting those recruiting specific conversations. So I know I mentioned this before, but let's sort of double down on it here. For our juniors and seniors and your ability to have those recruiting specific conversations, again, that means that you can specifically speak to them about your future at their program. So what you cannot do as a freshman or sophomore is me go up to Coach Gerhardt from Lafayette, who is a Division I coach, and say, hey, Coach Gerhardt, I'm Corey Spera. I'm a sophomore shortstop from Virginia, and I want to play softball at Lafayette College. Do you see me as a potential recruit for you all, as a member of the class of 2022? That is a very recruiting specific conversation that Coach Gerhardt would have to shy away from. If you're a junior or senior, you can have that conversation and you can start to say, Coach, what's your class looking like? How do I fit in on your board? Am I one of your top recruits? Do I have some room to go? Is there a chance that I could move up that board? Is there really not much of a chance? Should I really start to consider other opportunities? Those very recruiting specific and then persuasive in nature, if it gets there, where a coach is telling you, hey, this is why you should attend Harvard. This is why you should come to Dartmouth over your other opportunities. And you saying, hey, Coach, this, I think my skill set matches up so well with your program, and why I should be one of your top recruits and one of your 5 recruited players this year. that's where it gets to be recruiting specific. So I know those parameters are not sort of written in Sharpie, and there's not that concrete definition. But that's the understanding that we have been working off of, and that has worked really well for our players at camp. Two more things here. For those younger ball players first, we don't want you to be apprehensive. And I know I went over a couple things to speak about sort of those introductions that, in-game coaching and then using the coaches as, opportunities to, increase your skill development in your tools as a ball player. We don't want players who are freshmen and sophomores to be apprehensive going into conversations. Know this, coaches are going to self-police this. That's how the rule is policed. It is self-police. So if a coach, a Division I coach, sees the conversation starting to skew a little bit more recruiting specific, they're going to let you know. And they're going to steer that conversation back away from any recruiting specific conversation. So just know that it is okay as a freshman and sophomore. We don't want you to be apprehensive in going to speak with these coaches because these rules are in place. You're not going to get anyone in trouble. You're not going to get yourself in trouble or that coach in trouble. It'll be fine. The coaches will take care of that self-policing. One more note too that's worth mentioning here, Kev. This is a rule that is specific to Division I schools. This is a Division I school, Division I rule only. So if you're a freshman or sophomore and you'd like to have a recruiting specific conversation with a Division III school that's in attendance, by all means, you are more than welcome to do so. All right. Well, in the interest of time, with less than a minute left, and it looks like I'm getting the thumbs up from Kevin here that we've answered all the questions. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Again, if you come up with questions a little bit later on this evening or later on this week, please reach out to us via phone, via email. We are here to help in any way that we can. And we are so excited to see you this weekend and to get down to Orlando with you all. It'll be a fantastic weekend. And again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Travel safely, and we'll see you soon.